one of the things that Lash talks about at length is how we've become a culture sort of overwhelmed with the proliferation of visual and audio images. So as he points, like we're a culture transfixed on spectacle. Quote, we live in a swirl of images and echoes that arrest experience and play it back in slow motion. Cameras and recording machines not only transcribe experience, but alter its quality, giving to much of modern life the character of an enormous echo chamber, a hall of mirrors, end quote. And that development that Lash was reporting on in 1979, I think sort of has been taken to its logical extreme with Instagram, right? Which is just a stream of straight images. And, a consequence of all these images from Lash perspective that are incoming is that the line between reality and fiction has become very blurry. Like if you go back 100 years ago, people really had no means to record themselves. They weren't self-producing thousands of pictures and videos of themselves every year like we are now. And, now not only are we producing all this content, but we're also curating it for others to see on social media. We're crafting a digital image-based version or brand of our lives, for other people to consume. And the question kind of becomes like, where does the real person end and the avatar begin? And we've all kind of heard that idea that social media isn't a realistic representation of life. It's just people's highlight reels. At least a lot of people curate their social media in that way. But the kind of the way it screws with your mind is that social media is not like totally fictional. It's not fictional in the way that a movie or a novel is fictional, where it's clearly separated from reality. Like people did actually take a vacation to Aruba. People did actually get married. That the footage from those events is real. Just like Keeping Up with the Kardashians is scripted, but it actually is featuring a real family. And, again, like the psychological consequence of that line being blurred between reality and fiction, again, according to Lash, is that real life starts to take on the quality of feeling a little unreal as well. There's this sort of creeping in from the digital world of unreality into real life itself. I think you kind of see it like in the way that maybe people have had that sort of like creeping feeling that we're like living in a simulation that's come on in recent years. And I think that probably that feeling wouldn't have really presented itself had the digital space not grown to the size it has. And anyway, I just feel like I kind of agree with Lash. I feel like our sense of position and reality has lost a little bit of its concreteness because the line has become so blurred.
And a lot of people spent time on screens in games during the pandemic, so that accelerated all of this. And think about it, he was pretty spot on a lot of this. And I agree that our brains we're not built or designed to like have this many tabs open and take on this many pieces of content and this much data all at once and like so consistently. I obviously think you can feel the pressure on your brain if you spend too much time in front of a screen over prolonged periods. Like we're just not designed for it. But on the flip side, I was thinking like, imagine how lonely it really was back in the day when you had just trees, sounds of birds and insects around you. Like imagine you're living and it's like you don't even hear the distant the sound of cars in the distance. It would be really, really lonely. And it's like, think about that life. So anyway, I was just thinking about that in terms of just the complete opposite of just this overwhelming amount of data that we always have. And like, it's this idea that there's a scatterbrain that's happening now because of all of this data. But imagine if back in the day, and I understand there isn't as much stuff and noise, but imagine back in the day, like what was their scatterbrain? Like how did anyone control their mind back in the day? But anyway, like
yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
like
you're getting that. Yeah.
What was the noise in their life? But anyway, this idea of
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say one thing. If you ever kind of want to like transport yourself back to that time, watching like modern westerns. I watched this movie last year, The Homesman, and just like you're talking about, like the characters are in the frontier. There's no TV. It's just a movie, but there's no TV, there's no music. Like the set design is very Spartan. You can get this feeling that everything is very quiet. It's pretty much just them in their little cabin, or on the trail, and everything else is just uncultivated nature. And it definitely, I think you throw any one of us back into an environment like that, I think it would be terrifying.
Yeah,
Absolutely terrifying.
I think our minds would still be racing, and it would feel like we have a lot of tabs open, but this time it's like racing and the survival is on the line. But it's funny you say that, because I was on a hike recently, and we're going and we hear the crunch under our feet and we're listening to the birds and the insects, and then like you'll hear some people just come by with like their radio on. And it's just funny to me. It just, in this context of thinking about, yeah, here we are in 2021, and even if we go hiking, some people bring their music
Yeah.
with them.
Right. Yeah.